Chapter 1. The Perfect Daughter. Some crimes don't just shock us because of their brutality. They devastate us because they shatter everything we believe about love, trust, and the people we think we know. Tonight, we're diving deep into a case that didn't just destroy two families, it revealed how the most dangerous predators often hide behind the faces of those we're supposed to trust most. This is the story of Lauren Astley, an 18-year-old girl whose only crime was showing kindness to someone drowning in his own darkness. It's about first love turned deadly obsession, warning signs that were dismissed as teenage drama, and a young woman whose bright future was stolen by someone she once called her boyfriend. Are you ready to discover what really happened on that tragic summer night in 2011? Let's begin. Lauren Astley was born on April 1st, 1993 in Boston, Massachusetts. And from the very beginning, she was everything parents dream of in a daughter. Her parents, Mary and Malcolm Astley, both dedicated teachers, raised her with values of honesty, integrity, and service to others that would define her entire short life. Standing just 4 feet 11 inches tall, Lauren's petite stature was completely overshadowed by her enormous personality and boundless energy. This wasn't a girl who simply participated in activities. She excelled at everything she touched: church choir, youth symphony orchestra, camp counselor, and even landing the lead role as Annie in the local theater production. But here's what made Lauren truly special. Her heart for others was extraordinary, even by adult standards. At just 12 years old, while most kids her age were worried about video games and sleepovers, Lauren traveled to New Orleans not once, not twice, but 3 times to help Hurricane Katrina victims rebuild their lives. Think about that for a moment, a 12-year-old child choosing to spend her time helping strangers in crisis. Her classmates at Wayland High School knew they could always count on Lauren. Need help with homework? Lauren was there. Going through a tough breakup? Lauren would listen. Struggling with family problems? Lauren offered her whole heart. Teachers loved her dedication. Friends admired her authenticity. And everyone who met her was genuinely touched by her spirit. As senior year approached, Lauren was looking toward the future with the kind of excitement that only comes from knowing you've worked hard and earned your dreams. She'd been accepted to Elon University in North Carolina, ready to take on the world with the same energy and compassion that had defined her teenage years. But there was one aspect of her life that was becoming increasingly complicated, increasingly dangerous. Though no one realized it at the time, her relationship with Nathaniel Fuja was about to turn deadly. Chapter 2. The Perfect Couple. Nathaniel Fuja seemed like everything a high school girl could want. Tall, athletic, popular, he was the star player on Wayland High School's football team, the kind of guy who had girls cheering his name at every game. But Nathan only had eyes for one person: the spirited, talented Lauren Astley. Nathan came from what appeared to be a perfect family. His father, Tom Fuja, was a respected guitarist who taught at Boston's prestigious Berklee College of Music. The creative pursuits and musical achievements made the Fuja family well known and well regarded in their community. When Nathan and Lauren started dating, their families became close. So close that Lauren would regularly visit the Fuja household and even interviewed Tom for a school project that ended up on YouTube. Both sets of parents thought their children were absolutely perfect for each other. For the first 2 years, everything seemed ideal. They spent time together playing sports, hanging out at family gatherings, and enjoying what looked like the quintessential high school romance. Many people in their community considered them the perfect couple. But beneath that perfect surface, cracks were already forming. Cracks that would eventually become deadly fissures. Nathan could be moody and possessive in ways that seemed romantic at first, but were actually warning signs. He drew attention from other girls constantly. After all, he was the star football player. Yet he became intensely jealous whenever Lauren so much as talked to another guy. He felt threatened by her many activities, her friendships, her natural ability to light up any room she entered. Their relationship became a turbulent cycle that Lauren's friends would later recognize as classic relationship abuse patterns. Arguing, breaking up, Nathan pursuing her relentlessly until she agreed to reconcile, a brief honeymoon period, then back to arguing again, over and over and over. In 2009, during one of their off periods, Lauren went to a school dance with friends, acting like a normal teenager who wasn't tied down to a possessive boyfriend. A young man who'd been interested in her asked her to dance, and they shared what should have been an innocent kiss between two single teenagers. But Nathan appeared out of nowhere like something from a horror movie. He forcefully shoved the young man and threatened to slit his throat if he ever approached Lauren again. Let me repeat that. He threatened to slit someone's throat over a dance and a kiss. This should have been a massive red flag, a moment when everyone around Lauren realized her boyfriend was dangerous. But instead, it seemed to fade into the background as just another dramatic teenage moment. Their relationship continued its toxic pattern, with friends and family dismissing Nathan's possessiveness as just being really in love with Lauren. Lauren's friends began to see the truth more clearly as time went on. Together, they actually created a written list of reasons she needed to end things with Nathan permanently. The list included his explosive temper, extreme jealousy, increasingly aggressive behavior, and his disrespectful treatment of his own mother, another major warning sign of future domestic violence. All the warning signs were there, written out in black and white by teenage girls who could see what the adults missed. But first, love can be blinding, and Lauren wasn't ready to listen. Before we continue with this tragic story, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been in a relationship with warning signs you ignored? Or maybe you've seen friends dismiss red flags because they were in love. Your stories help others recognize dangerous patterns. And if this case is resonating with you, please hit that subscribe button. We cover cases like this every week, always with the respect these victims deserve. Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. As senior year arrived, Lauren began thinking seriously about her future in ways that Nathan couldn't handle. She'd been accepted to Elon University in North Carolina, while Nathan had received an invitation to play football at Trinity College in Connecticut. For most couples, this would be a natural transition. Either make it work long distance or amicably part ways and start fresh in college. But Nathan wasn't like most boyfriends. On April 1st, 2011, Lauren's 18th birthday, she finally found the courage to end their relationship permanently. She would later tell friends that April 1st was one of the best days of her life. The timing made perfect sense. Both heading to different colleges, both technically adults now, both ready to start new chapters. For Lauren, this breakup represented freedom and the fresh start she desperately needed. For Nathan, it was absolutely devastating in ways that went far beyond normal heartbreak. The college football opportunity at Trinity College that had once been his dream suddenly meant nothing. The athletic achievements, the popularity, the future he'd planned, none of it mattered if Lauren wasn't part of it. Nathan began a downward spiral that should have terrified everyone around him. The energetic, motivated athlete who'd spent years training and staying in peak physical condition gradually withdrew into himself. He spent most days on the couch looking distant and depressed, like someone who'd lost all purpose in life. He stopped socializing completely, avoided his friends entirely, and abandoned all his usual routines. During this period, Nathan began drinking heavily and smoking marijuana daily. His behavior became so concerning that his mother, Beth, took him to see a therapist. But therapy only works if the person wants help, and Nathan clearly didn't. He was spiraling into a dark place, and despite months passing since the breakup, he couldn't or wouldn't move forward. Here's what makes this even more tragic. Lauren, being the compassionate person she was, still worried about someone she'd once been so close to. She didn't want to see him in pain, even though he'd made her life miserable for months. On several occasions, she asked her friends whether she should reach out to try to help him get better. Every single time, they advised her against it, warning her not to give Nathan any reason to believe their relationship might be rekindled. Her friends could see what Lauren's kind heart couldn't, that reaching out would only make his obsession worse. In hindsight, her friends were absolutely right. Chapter 4. The Final Warning. Summer 2011 should have been one of the happiest times of Lauren's life. She was enjoying her final months at home before college, working at a clothing store in the mall to earn some spending money, surrounded by friends who loved her and family who supported her dreams. Her friends organized a massive graduation party under a large tent, with about 150 students and recent graduates in attendance. It was supposed to be a celebration of their accomplishments and the bright futures ahead of them. Nathan showed up already heavily intoxicated, while Lauren was chatting with friends and genuinely enjoying the celebration. Probably the first time she'd been truly relaxed in months without worrying about Nathan's moods. He approached her in yet another attempt to reconcile. Lauren firmly told him to leave her alone. In her mind, everything had been discussed thoroughly months ago. There was nothing left to say, especially not with someone who was drunk and clearly not thinking rationally. But Nathan couldn't bear the sight of Lauren being happy without him. He refused to accept her rejection and spent the entire night pestering and pressuring her, following her around like a predator stalking prey. At one point, Lauren broke down in tears, confiding in a friend that Nathan simply wouldn't leave her alone. He was determined to prevent her from dancing with anyone else, from enjoying her own graduation party. With each passing minute, his anger grew, fueled by alcohol and the reality that Lauren had truly moved on. When she once again refused to speak with him, Nathan did something that should have resulted in his immediate arrest. He stormed over to one of the tent poles holding up the entire structure and struck it with all his strength, causing the massive tent to collapse on 150 people below. Think about that for a moment. Nathan was so enraged by Lauren's happiness that he deliberately collapsed a tent on 150 of his former classmates and friends. This wasn't a momentary loss of temper. This was a calculated act of violence that could have seriously injured dozens of people. The tent was quickly lifted and put back in place, but the damage was done. The celebration was effectively ruined. Now it wasn't just Lauren telling Nathan to leave. Everyone at the party wanted him gone. He'd crossed a line from being a persistent ex-boyfriend to being genuinely dangerous. That night, Lauren told her mother about Nathan's behavior, explaining how he refused to accept that she'd moved on with her life. He was furious about the breakup, angry that she wouldn't speak to him, and bitter over the fact that she seemed genuinely happy without him. This should have been the moment when someone called the police. This should have been when restraining orders were filed. This should have been when Nathan's parents got him serious psychiatric help, not just therapy he could refuse. But it wasn't. And 3 weeks later, Lauren Astley would be dead. Chapter 5. The last day, July 3rd, 2011, started as a completely normal day for Lauren Astley. She arrived at her job at the mall clothing store at 10 a.m., with security cameras recording her entering the building at 9:45 a.m. and riding the escalator up to her workplace. She worked her full shift, probably thinking about her evening plans and looking forward to spending time with friends. At 6:45 p.m., her shift ended. Security footage showed her leaving the building while talking on her phone footage that would become crucial evidence and the last time anyone would see Lauren Astley alive. She had made plans to meet friends for a walk after work, something they did regularly during that summer before college. But Lauren never showed up, and this was completely unlike her. If something came up and she couldn't make it, she would always find a way to let her friends know. Her reliability was something everyone could count on. It was part of who she was. Her father, Malcolm, was also deeply worried when Lauren didn't come home to change clothes as planned. He knew her routine, knew her character, and he sensed immediately that something was terribly wrong. Malcolm didn't waste any time waiting to see if she'd show up. He called the police right away to report her missing. That same evening, police made a discovery that sent chills through everyone who knew Lauren. Her red Jeep was found parked at Wayland Beach with the windows rolled down. Inside were her bag and laptop items she would never have left behind voluntarily. But Lauren herself was nowhere to be found. When Malcolm heard about the discovery, he rushed to the scene like any desperate father would, running straight from the parking lot to the water's edge with a flashlight in hand. He searched the shoreline frantically, calling out her name into the darkness, probably hoping against hope that she was just sitting somewhere, maybe hurt, but alive. She wasn't there. Lauren's terrified friends spent that entire night at the beach, unable to go home, unable to accept that something terrible might have happened. They sat by the shore waiting and wondering, still believing that somehow Lauren would appear with a reasonable explanation for where she'd been. None of them even considered the possibility that she was already dead. This case shows how quickly a normal day can turn into every parent's worst nightmare. If you're finding this story as heartbreaking as I am, please take a moment to leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into cases that matter. Your engagement helps more people learn Lauren's story and recognize the warning signs that could save lives. Chapter 6. The investigation begins. When police began questioning Lauren's close friends and family members, they initially struggled to identify anyone who might want to hurt such a beloved young woman. Lauren didn't have enemies. She had friends, family who adored her, teachers who respected her, and community members who'd watched her grow up. But when officers pressed further and asked more specific questions, they learned about Nathan Fuja and the increasingly toxic relationship that had ended just 3 months earlier. Despite the rocky history everyone knew about, Lauren's friends initially insisted that Nathan couldn't possibly hurt her. He could be moody, jealous, even possessive, they admitted, but they didn't see him as truly dangerous or capable of actual violence. However, experienced investigators know that jealousy combined with a recent breakup creates one of the most dangerous scenarios in domestic violence cases. They'd seen it before. The ex-boyfriend, who can't accept rejection, who views his former girlfriend as property, rather than a person with her own rights and choices. That same evening, as part of their standard investigation, officers went to the Fuja family home to speak with Nathan and his mother, Beth. Nathan claimed he'd been home the entire evening, which gave him an alibi, though not a particularly strong one, since only his mother could verify his whereabouts. But here's where Nathan made his first crucial mistake. He told officers that he had in fact seen Lauren that day. According to his version of events, she had stopped by his house for about 5 minutes, but had never gotten out of her car. They'd had what he described as a brief, awkward conversation through the car window, after which she left and he claimed he hadn't seen her since. On the surface, his story seemed plausible enough. The officers noted that the breakup had clearly affected Nathan deeply. He'd withdrawn from normal activities, grown visibly depressed, and stopped socializing entirely, which had concerned his family greatly. But experienced investigators also know that perpetrators often include just enough truth in their lies to make them believable. Yes, Lauren had stopped by Nathan's house, but what happened during those 5 minutes was far from the brief, awkward conversation Nathan described. The following morning, just before sunrise, everything changed. A cyclist riding along a road near the highway made a discovery that would haunt the community forever. As she passed a marshy area about 5 miles from town, she noticed something unusual floating in the dark water. Moving closer to investigate, she realized with absolute horror that it was the body of a young woman. It was Lauren Astley. Chapter 7. The evidence unfolds. When investigators carefully brought Lauren's body to shore, the cause of death became immediately and tragically apparent. The state police detective discovered a deep, fatal wound to her neck. 18-year-old Lauren Astley had suffered a severe throat slash. An elastic cord was also found tangled in her hair, indicating she'd been strangled before the fatal injury was inflicted. Her body was quickly transported to the medical examiner's office for a complete autopsy, while Malcolm Astley faced every parent's worst nightmare, having to identify the body of his only child. When he saw Lauren, there was no doubt, and the pain was absolutely unbearable. Malcolm then had to break the devastating news to Lauren's mother, his ex-wife Mary. Despite their divorce years earlier, they'd remained united in their love and support for their daughter. Now they had to face this unimaginable tragedy together. As news spread throughout the close-knit town, many people who'd known Nathan and Lauren as a couple spoke in complete disbelief. The idea that the popular football player could have done something so brutal to the young woman he'd claimed to love seemed impossible to accept. But the evidence was about to tell a very different story. When investigators examined Lauren's phone records, they discovered she'd been talking to Nathan as she left work on that final day. The conversation had been brief, but it established a direct connection between them at the exact time she disappeared. Further investigation revealed that Lauren had indeed planned to stop by Nathan's house for just 5 minutes before going home to change clothes and meet her friends. She hadn't told anyone about these specific plans, a decision that would prove fatal. Nathan's parents weren't home that evening. leaving the house empty except for Nathan himself. When Lauren arrived, she sent him a single text message that simply said, "Here." It was her way of letting him know she was outside and ready for their brief conversation. This would be the last message Lauren Astley ever sent, delivered on July 3rd at exactly 7:05 p.m. The last place she was confirmed to be alive was Nathan's house, which gave police investigators their primary focus for what would become an overwhelming case built on physical evidence. Chapter 8. The Physical Evidence. On July 4th, officers returned to the Fuja home to speak with Nathan again, but they discovered he was gone. His parents claimed they had no idea where he was or when he might return, a claim that would later prove false. Authorities moved quickly to secure a search warrant for the Fuja family home. Time was crucial in a case like this, and they needed concrete physical evidence to support their growing suspicion that Nathan was directly involved in Lauren's death. They started their search in the garage, and what they found there immediately confirmed their worst fears. Officers discovered multiple traces of blood on the garage floor, on the door handle leading into the house, in the kitchen sink, and in the bathroom sink. Someone had clearly made deliberate attempts to clean these surfaces, but traces of blood remained visible to trained investigators. In the basement, they found a black sports bag containing a pair of sneakers that were completely caked in thick, dark mud. In the attic, accessible only by ladder from Nathan's bedroom, they discovered another pair of shoes along with blood-stained boots and clothing items. The mud on the sneakers appeared identical to the type found near the swamp where Lauren's body had been discovered, but they needed laboratory analysis to confirm the match. When the forensic results came back, they left absolutely no doubt about what had happened that night. Nathan's clothes and boots contained Lauren's blood, and the mud samples were indeed from the exact marshy area where her body had been found. The physical evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, but the evidence revealed even more disturbing details about what Nathan had done after murdering Lauren. This wasn't a crime of passion followed by panic. This was methodical, calculated behavior that showed clear thinking and deliberate planning. After killing Lauren in his garage, Nathan had removed his blood-stained boots and changed into tennis shoes. He then walked more than 4 miles through town to the beach parking lot, where he abandoned Lauren's red Jeep, throwing the car keys into a storm drain, where investigators later recovered them. Nathan had then walked back to his house, loaded Lauren's body into his own vehicle, and driven to the remote wetland area. There, he'd waded 33 feet through thick, muddy water to dispose of her body, apparently believing she would sink to the bottom and never be discovered. This level of planning and cover-up activity completely contradicted any potential insanity defense. This was the behavior of someone who knew exactly what he'd done and was trying to avoid getting caught. Chapter 9. Arrest and Trial. Following the forensic findings, Nathan Fuja was officially placed on law enforcement's wanted list. He was located at his cousin's home in a nearby town just a few hours later, exactly where his parents knew he'd be despite claiming ignorance to police. Shortly after midnight on July 4th, 2011, the 18-year-old former football star was taken into custody and formally charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend. When police arrested Nathan, he remained completely silent and unresponsive during their initial questioning. This detached, almost emotionless demeanor continued for months, right up until the start of his formal trial. Whether his silence was strategic legal advice or simply an inability to explain or justify his actions, Nathan offered no insight into what had happened that night. During the investigation, even more disturbing details emerged about Nathan's behavior and state of mind. The night before the murder, he'd called his cousin and invited her to hang out with him. When she declined, saying she already had other plans, Nathan became angry and abruptly hung up the phone, another example of his inability to handle rejection. The next day, after news of Lauren's death began spreading through the community, the same cousin called Nathan to see if he was aware of what had happened to his ex-girlfriend. His response was absolutely chilling and revealed his guilty knowledge of the crime. Nathan told his cousin that the murder weapon would never be found, indicating he'd already disposed of it in a way that he believed would prevent its discovery. He also revealed that he'd personally driven Lauren's red Jeep to the beach parking lot, claiming he'd needed a break and wanted to spend some time by the water. These statements to his cousin would become crucial evidence showing Nathan's consciousness of guilt and his attempts to cover up the crime. The level of calculation Nathan showed after murdering Lauren is truly chilling. This wasn't a moment of rage, it was methodical and planned. What do you think about cases where the perpetrator tries to claim insanity despite evidence of rational behavior? Let me know in the comments, and if you're learning something new about how these cases are investigated, please subscribe for more in-depth true crime analysis. Chapter 10. The Defense Strategy. On August 23, 2011, Nathan appeared in court for his preliminary hearing. When the judge asked him to enter his plea to the charges, he spoke so softly it was barely audible, stating in a whisper that he was not guilty. The prosecutor immediately suspected that Nathan's defense team was preparing an insanity-based legal strategy. Nathan faced serious charges of first-degree murder, as well as assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. Both charges carried the possibility of life imprisonment if he were to be convicted. By the time Nathan's trial began on February 13, 2013, 18 long months had passed since Lauren Astley's brutal death. From the very beginning of proceedings, the defense team claimed that Nathan was legally insane at the time of the murder, holding firmly to this narrative throughout the entire 3-week trial. In a shocking opening statement, Nathan's lawyer made an extraordinary admission to the jury. He openly stated that Nathan had indeed killed Lauren Astley, but argued that the real questions the jury needed to consider were how and why the murder had occurred. The defense strategy was clear. They weren't going to deny that Nathan had committed the murder, but rather claim that he wasn't mentally capable of understanding his actions or knowing that what he was doing was wrong. According to the defense team's version of events, Nathan hadn't been stalking Lauren after their high school graduation. He hadn't driven by her home repeatedly, called her obsessively, or sent threatening messages. Instead, they argued he'd withdrawn completely from society in his depression. The defense brought in expert psychiatric testimony claiming Nathan was suffering from severe clinical depression, not just a heartbreak over a relationship ending, but a genuine, diagnosable mental illness. They argued that his mother had taken him to a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with this condition and recommended both medication and therapy, but Nathan had refused both treatments. The defense team also pointed to repeated head injuries Nathan had sustained while playing high school football, suggesting these traumatic brain injuries may have contributed to his mental instability and inability to control his actions. It was a comprehensive insanity defense, but it had one major problem. All the physical evidence showed rational, methodical behavior after the murder. Chapter 11. The Prosecution's Case. The prosecution argued the exact opposite of everything the defense claimed. They maintained that Nathan Fuja had intentionally and deliberately murdered his ex-girlfriend Lauren Astley because he couldn't cope with her rejection and his inability to control her life. Evidence presented by prosecutors showed that on the day of the murder, Nathan had attempted to reach Lauren at her workplace, calling her multiple times before she finally answered as she was leaving work. The prosecution argued that Nathan had deliberately coerced Lauren into coming to his house, knowing full well that his parents would not be home. This wasn't a coincidence or a spontaneous meeting. Nathan had planned this encounter. The autopsy results revealed horrific details about Lauren's final moments. She had sustained multiple injuries beyond just strangulation and the fatal throat wound. There were clear defensive wounds on her hands and arms, indicating that she'd fought desperately for her life against her attacker. Lauren Astley didn't just die, she fought. She tried to defend herself against someone who'd once claimed to love her, someone who'd held her hand, someone who'd been welcomed into her family's home. The betrayal was absolute. After killing Lauren, the prosecution argued Nathan had shown clear evidence of rational thinking and methodical planning that completely contradicted any insanity defense. He'd removed his blood-stained boots and changed into tennis shoes. He'd walked over 4 miles through town to abandon Lauren's car at the beach. He'd thrown her keys into a storm drain. He'd returned home, loaded her body into his vehicle, and driven to a remote location where he'd waded through muddy water to dispose of her body. Every single one of these actions showed someone who understood exactly what he'd done and was taking deliberate steps to avoid getting caught. This wasn't the behavior of someone who was legally insane. This was the behavior of a calculated killer trying to cover his tracks. The prosecution also presented evidence of Nathan's consciousness of guilt through his statements to his cousin about the murder weapon never being found, and his lies about driving Lauren's car to the beach for a break. Chapter 12. Justice and Legacy. On March 7, 2013, after deliberating for a full day, the jury returned with their verdict. Nathan Fuja was found guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder. The evidence had been overwhelming, and the jury saw through the insanity defense to recognize this crime for what it truly was: a deliberate act of violence by someone who couldn't accept that Lauren Astley had the right to live her life without him. As the sentence was read, something remarkable happened that spoke to the incredible character and strength of Lauren's family. Malcolm Astley, Lauren's father, crossed the courtroom and embraced Nathan's devastated parents, Beth and Tom. Despite everything Nathan had done, despite the pain he'd caused, Malcolm understood that both families had lost something precious and irreplaceable. This moment of grace and forgiveness in the face of unimaginable loss showed the kind of person Lauren had been raised by, the kind of values she'd learned that made her the compassionate young woman everyone remembered. Nathan Fuja was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In Massachusetts, anyone convicted of first-degree murder automatically receives this sentence. There was no discretion, no possibility of a lighter punishment. Lauren's parents channeled their grief into something positive that would honor their daughter's memory. They established the Lauren Astley Memorial Foundation, promoting the arts, community involvement, and healthy teenage relationships. The foundation works to educate young people about the warning signs of relationship violence, helping them recognize that possessiveness isn't romantic, that jealousy isn't love, and that threats of violence should always be taken seriously. However, there's a troubling development that terrifies Lauren's parents. In January 2024, the Massachusetts Supreme Court overturned the law requiring life sentences without parole for those under 20 at the time of their crime. This means Nathan could potentially become eligible for parole, a possibility that brings back all the pain and fear for Lauren's family. The idea that Nathan might someday walk free is a nightmare for parents who've already endured the ultimate loss. Conclusions. The case of Lauren Astley serves as a tragic reminder of how quickly relationships can turn deadly when warning signs are ignored or dismissed as normal teenage drama. Nathan's jealousy, possessiveness, threats of violence, and inability to accept rejection were all red flags pointing toward potential danger. Looking back, we can see the escalation clearly. The threat to slit someone's throat over a dance, the possessive behavior that Lauren's friends documented in writing, the violent outburst at the graduation party that injured 150 people when Nathan collapsed the tent. Each incident was more serious than the last, building toward the ultimate act of violence. Lauren's story teaches us that domestic violence can hide behind the facade of a popular athlete and seemingly perfect high school romance. When someone shows you who they really are through threatening behavior, controlling actions, and violent outbursts, we must believe them and take those warnings seriously. We also learn that the most dangerous time for victims of domestic violence is often after they've ended the relationship. The period immediately following a breakup is when many perpetrators escalate from control and threats to actual violence. Lauren thought she was safe because she'd ended things with Nathan and was moving on with her life, but for someone like Nathan, her happiness without him was the ultimate threat. Lauren Astley wasn't just a victim, she was a daughter, friend, talented performer, and young woman with unlimited potential who'd spent her life making the world better. She'd traveled to New Orleans as a child to help hurricane victims. She'd been the person her friends could always count on for support. She'd been preparing for college and a future full of possibilities. Her legacy lives on through her foundation and the countless people who've learned from her story, working to prevent other families from experiencing such devastating loss. Every young person who recognizes warning signs because of Lauren's story, every parent who takes threats seriously because they've heard what happened to Lauren, every friend who refuses to dismiss controlling behavior as love, they're all part of Lauren's continuing impact on the world. In the end, Lauren Astley's story is about more than one tragic crime. It's about recognizing that love should never hurt, that relationships should never make us afraid, and that everyone deserves to be with someone who supports their dreams rather than trying to control their every move. If Lauren's story resonates with you, if it's taught you something about recognizing dangerous relationships or supporting friends who might be in trouble, then her short life continues to have meaning. That's the most fitting tribute we can give to a young woman who spent her time on Earth trying to help others, making sure her story helps save lives that might otherwise be lost. Lauren Astley deserved so much better than the fate that met her on that July night in 2011. We can't bring her back, but we can honor her memory by refusing to let her story be forgotten and by working to ensure that other young women get the chance to live the full, beautiful lives that Lauren never got to experience. Lauren's story is one that every parent, every teenager, and every person in a relationship should know. If this case has impacted you, please share it with others who need to hear it. Leave a comment about what you've learned, and subscribe to help us continue telling the stories of victims who deserve to be remembered. Together, we can help prevent tragedies like this from happening to other families.